Welcome to MTG Friends, I'm Ryan, and in this episode we're going to be doing Commander deck tech for Moraug, Fury of Akoum, a new commander from the new Zendikar Rising set. And this, before we get into what he does and how we're building this, let's just talk about the different packages we have within this. So some of them are the normal, like the land package, the ramp package, and in every episode, of course, we have the shenanigans package. We have the double combat package, which in essence can be triple, quadruple package, etc., etc. The removal set, the haste, and the draw, and then a few alt win conditions. At the end, we'll discuss budgetary swaps. I'll also do that throughout. However, let's just get started and start with the commander. So, Moraug, Fury of Akoum has some interesting landfall mechanics. He is a 6-drop, 6/6 legendary Minotaur warrior. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. In essence, when you hit a landfall, he and all of the creatures you have on the battlefield can attack twice. And then it gets exacerbated if you have more than one landfall, which we have riddled within this build. So this build, what is it about? One, it's about levering these mechanics for Moraug. The other is that we're going to be giving haste to our field as much and as frequently as possible. And then we have some shenanigan stuff where we're going to be taking other creatures. We're going to be just doing a lot of very fun, interesting things. And for a red mono deck, we're actually going to have a lot of ramp and a good amount of draw, which is the two most difficult things to do in a red mono deck. So without further ado, we're going to actually just start first in the land category. Blast through this real quick. Now, we are running Blood Moon, so all of our non-basic cards when Blood Moon is out are all going to be mountains. Now, this is mostly to put some hate on your opponents, but a lot of these non-basic cards that we are running are to lever that landfall mechanic. And you'll see what I mean as we blast through a few of these. Now, Ancient Tomb, just a great card. You tap it for 2 colorless, and it deals you 2 damage. Just a very good ramping card. There are, of course, alternatives to all of these lands. These are the most swappable out of all of them. Next up is Arid Mesa. Now, this is one in all of the possible fetch lands that we can run. And the reason we're running these fetch lands is so that we can trigger landfall multiple times. And again, for budgetary reasons, if you don't have the fetch lands, then just swap them out for another land or a mountain for that matter. So, first fetch land. Blast Zone, just a very good utility land, and if we got Blood Moon out there, it's just a mountain, which does not hurt us in one bit. And this one, in case you're not familiar, Blast Zone enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. Add colorless, XX tap, put X charge counters on Blast Zone, and then you can sacrifice it for 3 in a tap and destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. Just a very, very solid removal land card that could actually be in the removal section, but it is a land. Bloodstained Mire, again, it's another fetch land. Swap it out if you don't got it. It's for landfall mechanics. Castle Embereth. Every red mono commander card should be running this card. It's great. It gives +1 to all your creatures. Evolving Wilds. Another landfall mechanic. Go fetch another land, trigger landfall twice. And with Moraug, you do that, you trigger it twice. That means he's going to be attacking not once, not twice, but 3 times, which is fantastic. Same thing for Fabled Passage. I always say this wrong. Grixis Panorama. Add colorless, or you sacrifice it to search for an island, swamp, or mountain. Obviously, it's in there for the mountain. Again, landfall. June Panorama. Sack it, search your library. Then we're running 15 lands. Mountain lands. of course. Myriad Landscape, another sack, go fetch. Nea Panorama, sack, go fetch. Nykthos Shrined Nyx. This is a fantastic card. Choose a color. Add to your mana pool an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. No brainer. Put this in. It is a rather spendy card, so either put in another utility land or put in another mountain. Prismatic Vista, fetch land, trigger the landfall. Rogue's Passage. Now this is interesting. This is a 4-tap. Target creature can't be blocked this turn, which is going to be really important for a lot of the creatures we're running. Scalding Tarn, another fetch land, sack, trigger landfall twice. Terrain Generator. You may put a basic land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Another landfall mechanic. Terraformic Expanse. Crack it, grab a land. Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. Now, this one is interesting. Valakut the Molten Pinnacle enters the battlefield tapped. Whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, you may have Valakut the Molten Pinnacle deal 3 damage to any target. So it's just got some added removal. It's a great card. Again, it's a little pricey. It's going to run you about $24. So swap this out for a mountain or another utility land that you really like. Wooded Footlands. It's another fetch land. So there you go, fetch lands. All right, we are now into what I'm calling the removal segment. And this is in the removal section mainly because it's going to remove all of the non-basic land abilities of your opponents. So since there are so many non-basic lands run on a regular basis in Commander, this is a very, very, very effective card when you're running Moraug, or any mono red deck for that matter. You should consider running Blood Moon in any mono red Commander deck you have, as long as it fits within the build that you're running. So non-basic lands are mountains. This is a staple, just a superior card for red. And again, like I said earlier, running this with your non-basics is not a problem because it's still a mountain and it's all good to go. Blood Sun. When Blood Sun enters the battlefield, draw a card. All lands lose all abilities except mana abilities. So again, kind of like a baby version of Blood Moon. Chaos Warp. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. Now, this is a pretty great card because you can get rid of something that's very persnickety on your opponent's battlefield, bury it, and it's a good red version of removal. Of course, you know, black is very superior in removal spells. Red is lacking in a lot of that. But this one is a very efficient, very good way of getting rid of something that's super beefy, super problematic. And also keep in mind, it's target permanent. So it doesn't have to be a creature. It can be an enchantment, a mana rock, whatever fits the particular instance that you're running this for. Cleansing Wildfire. This is a new one. This is a common, and it is so effective that it is in this Commander deck. Destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library, draw a card. So it's already good because you can draw a card for 2, but then you can also destroy a land that's a problem. Now, also, because we're running landfall so heavy, you could actually destroy one of your own lands so that you can trigger landfall an additional time. So there are going to be times where you're going to be using this to utilize your side of the board. Price of Glory. Oh, is this a nasty, nasty card? Whenever a player taps a land for mana during another player's turn, destroy that land. So your opponents are going to have to think, hey, am I going to be running some counters and instances? Because if I do, I'm going to have to lose a land. Great, excellent, excellent card. All right, Ruination. Destroy all non-basic lands. I mean, it's not as bad as like an Armageddon, but this thing is really going to wreak havoc on your opponent's board. Now, keep in mind, if you run this when you have Blood Moon out, it's going to be meaningless because all non-basic lands will be mountains at that point. So just be careful how you run this, especially with Blood Moon, and you'll be groovy. And of course, it'll destroy your non-basic lands too, except that's not really going to be an issue because almost all, if not almost all of our non-basics are going to go fetch other lands. Vanda Blast is just a really insidiously awesome red staple card, should I say. It only costs you 1, but it has Overload. Destroy target artifact you don't control. But for 5, you can destroy all artifacts you don't control. And I think this is great because this is everyone else's artifacts, none of yours. Nahiri's Lithiforming. This is one of those win cons. We have a couple, but this one was of note that I wanted to mention and put it into its own category. Sacrifice X lands. For each land sacrificed this way, draw a card. You may play X additional lands this turn. Lands you control enter the battlefield tapped this turn. So if you destroy 5, 6, 7, whatever lands, and Moraug's on the battlefield, that means he's going to trigger that many times. So it doesn't matter if your lands come in tapped. He's going to be attacking however many lands hit that battlefield, which is why it's a win con. And especially if you have other things out there, this is just an incredibly powerful card in this build. And a shout out goes to Zach for mentioning that this one is a really cool, interesting, janky way to really lever Moraug in just a spicy way. All right, and then technically this is a land, but because it's a modal card with a not a shock land, but a bolt land on the other side, Shatter Skull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, Shatter Skull Smashing deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. So it's just a really good, efficient removal spell, burn spell. That's also a land if you need it. Great card. All right, we are into the ramp section. Now, one thing that Red always has a difficulty with is ramping up. So this is going to offset that a bit and make it a little bit easier. Alpine Guide for 3, a 3/3. That's not the important part about this card. When Alpine Guide enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a mountain card, put that card onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Alpine Guide attacks each combat if able. When Alpine Guide leaves the battlefield, sacrifice a mountain. That's okay. We're okay with that because it lets us ramp up pretty early and utilize that mountain until he's gone. Arcane Signet, just a staple. Excellent card. Burnished Heart for 3. It's a 2/2. And the important part is that you can pay 3, sacrifice it, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tap. So this is going to be triggering the landfall, which is great in mid-game, late game, but then it's also going to help us ramp. Cage Sun. As Cage Sun enters the battlefield, create creatures you control of the chosen color, get +1/+1, red of course. Whenever a land ability causes you to add 1 or more mana of the chosen color, add 1 additional mana of that color. Excellent. And it costs 6, but that's okay. Crucible of Worlds. We got this in here because we are running so many fetch lands. You may play land cards from your graveyard. Boy, this is a fantastically great card. It's been around for a while. When was the first printing of this? I believe it was 5th Dawn. Way back in 5th Dawn. I forgot it was that old. Just a staple in the MTG realm. This is fantastic. This is a great card. You want to run this card with all of the land base that we have. If you end up not having or pulling out all of the fetch lands because you don't have them, you're running something else, then you might want to consider pulling this. But there are other, like the Wilds and different cards like that you can still utilize this, or like Fabled Passage. So I highly recommend you keep this in this build. All right, Curse of Opulence. This one is each player, whenever enchanted player is attacked, create a colorless artifact token named Gold. It has sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. It's just a really great ramp card that's in red. Need I say more about that one? I needn't. Dockside Extortionist. This one, now it is spendy, and the reason it's spendy is because it is so efficient for red mana ramp. When Dockside Extortionist enters the battlefield, create extra treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponent controls. So you're going to get a lot of ramp ability here, because in Commander, assuming you're playing against 3 other people, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 artifacts out there, or enchantments for sure, within the first 4 or 5 turns. So great ramp ability. All right, Fire Diamond enters the battlefield tapped. Add 1 for 2. Sweet. Yes, please. Gauntlet of Power. This is an interesting one. I remember when this came out way back when in Time Spiral. It was interesting. It's for 5. As it comes into play, choose a color. Red. Creatures of the chosen color get +1. Sweet! Whenever a basic land is tapped for mana of that chosen color, its controller adds 1 mana of that color to his or her mana pool. So you double up, folks. Yes, yes, and yes. Ironcrag Feet. This is to just get up higher in that mana so that we can start dropping some heavy-duty stuff. Add 7 mana. You can cast only 1 more spell this turn. That's okay. That downside is a-okay. Iron Mirror. Add 1 red to your mana pool. Of course we're going to run that in mono red. Oh, here's a newcomer from Zendikar Rising. What a crazy card. This thing allows you to bank your red throughout your turn and until you keep going. Until it dies, for that matter. But it has an additional effect where when Leyline Tyrant dies, you may pay an additional red amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target. So if this thing's been alive and you've banked 15 red, you can hit somebody for 15. Pretty sweet. But more important, you have that pool to play other things with. Awesome. Mana Geyser. 5-drop. Add red to your mana pool for each tapped land your opponents control. Whew. Yeah. I don't think I need to say anything else about that. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion. Wow. Say that 3 times fast. This one synergizes incredibly well with Leyline Tyrant, and it's going to work really well with this banking your mana. Whenever Neheb Dreadlord Champion deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you may discard any number of cards. That's fine and dandy, but if you do draw that many cards and add that much red, until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And if you have Tyrant out, you don't lose it at all. Sweet. And this thing is only 50 cents? Yeah, run that thing. All right. Mana Reduction. Red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Run this in every single mono red deck you have till the end of time. Soul Ring, run it. Aggravated Assault. Now we're starting the double combat segment, which is just going to beef up and exacerbate the Moraug Commander mechanic even that much more. For 5, untap all creatures you control. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Hooey, man. Just keep on attacking. If Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do, untap all other creatures you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Whew. And exert, in case you didn't know, just means that your next untap stage for him, he doesn't untap. That's not a big downside for what he does in this build. Hellkite Charger. All right, he's a flying haster for 6, a 5/5. Whenever Hellkite Charger attacks, you may pay 7. If you do, untap all attacking creatures, and after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Ooh, yes. Yes. Insurrection. Oh, this one is going to not make you friends if you trigger this. For 5 red, untap all creatures. all creatures and gain control of them until end of turn. They gain haste until end of turn. Imagine if you have Moraug out and you play this and you steal all of your opponent's creature cards. Then you get to attack however many times you've triggered landfall. This probably should be in the win con condition segment, but this is technically a double combat scenario. Because you're most likely going to be hitting landfall. If you're not hitting landfall almost every turn, I would be surprised. All right, Savage Beating. Oh, what a savage card, man. For 5, play Savage Beating only during your turn and only during combat. That's fine, whatever. Choose one. Creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn. End of turn. So if you have multiple combats with Moraug or some of these other shenanigan cards, you're got double strike. Sweet. Creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn, or untap all creatures you control, and after this phase, there's an additional phase. So this actually has a little wiggle room to make a choice. Which one do you need more? Wow. Moraug on that card. Oh, that's some jank right there. All right, Gamble. This is a really cool tutor card. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, discard a card at random, then shuffle your library. For 1, a tutor in red? Absolutely. What? Yes. Geomancer's Gambit. This is for 3. Destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Draw a card. So, the draw card part is really cool, but you can also, if you don't need to remove something of your opponent's, you can target one of your own to trigger, that's right, landfall. Magus of the Wheel. We are into the draw segment. Sacrifice Magus of the Wheel. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. Now, in red, it is just a known issue that you run out of steam at times. You've played all your cards. You're just waiting for your draw. Well, this fixes this, and so do the next few. Reforge the Soul. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws 7 cards. And it's got Miracle, which means if you draw this, then it only costs you 2. Yes. Tome of Legends. I want to say Tomb, but there's no B there, so I think it's Tome. Tome of Legends enters the battlefield with a page counter on it. And this is from Throne of Eldraine. I think this is the first printing of that. Yes, it is. Only printing of that. Whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on Tome of Legends. For 1 and tap, remove a page counter from Tome of Legends. Draw a card. Yeah. For 2? Yes, absolutely. This is a great card. Winds of Change. Well, this one is pretty cool. And an old one. All the way back from 4th edition. Whew, wow. All players shuffle their hands into their libraries and then draw the same number of cards they originally held. So, of course, you're holding a bunch of stuff that's useless. Play this thing. And more importantly, it's going to make them dump the cards they're holding onto. All right, we're into the shenanigans section. Oh, if I was Irish, that would sound so much cooler. All right, Balefire Dragon is just an absolutely bomb in red. It's for 7/6/6 flyer with a bonus of whenever Balefire Dragon deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. So it's in essence a Wrath of God built into a creature. I mean, there's going to be a few things over 6 damage or indestructible, but this is a seriously great board clearing dragon. Run this card. And if you don't have this card, you don't have the budget for it, you can certainly swap it out with something else that's a flyer that's pretty beefy that does a few other things. We do have a few other flyers in here, however. Bedlam for 4. This is definitely a shenanigans situation because creatures can't block. And we're so aggro heavy with the hit in the face in this build, we don't really care that creatures can't block. That might become problematic if you're running against like an Infect deck or something. But if you're running against Infect, then you're going to be using all of your removal spells as much as you can and as quickly as you can. But that would be a very unique situation. Deflecting Swat. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. I am such a fan of these. It don't cost you nothing. You know, the black spell is even more powerful. Rollick, whatever. I'll throw it up on the board. This spell without paying its mana cost. You may choose new targets for target spell or ability. Wow, so this has got some blue feel to it, doesn't it? It's even got some blue colors in the art. Basically, it's saying, nope, you're not targeting this. Or you can choose something else. I love it. I love that. Dolmen Gate, all the way back from Lorwyn block. I was playing heavy duty back then, fairly competitively. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. Yes, so that means if you go swinging, they got lots of blockers, and you got this out, and you get to swing multiple times. You swing, they're protected. You start clearing their board. You swing again, there's less of them. Fabulous. It just keeps going from there. Dragon Master Outcast for 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, which you're gonna, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. And I know we haven't gotten to the haste section yet, but there's a very good chance on all these drops, things are gonna be having haste. Haste, please, yes. Drakaseth Maw of Flames for 4 red 7/7 flyer with this great added benefit. Whenever Drakaseth Maw of Flames attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target and 3 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. Well, that's a nice little board clear, and you can also be targeting your opponents if they have no creatures left. Atali Primal Storm for 6/6. Whenever Atali Primal Storm attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana costs. So, in a way, this is a draw mechanic, but you're not even drawing your own cards. You're drawing their cards, in essence, and then you can play them. This thing is bonkers, and it's only like $1.50. Yeah, this works very well in this build. Hellkite Tyrant is just a bomb in red, and that's why it's included. It's a 6/6/5 flying trample. Whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. Really? That's so incredible. I run this in anything that has red. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. And I must say, almost everything that runs in red, because you wouldn't necessarily run this in a tribal gobble. Turkey? What's wrong with my speech tonight? You wouldn't run this in a goblin tribal deck necessarily, because you'd be running goblins. Ilharg the Raised Boar, 5/6/6. This is right out of War Sparks. This is a great red drop. This allows us to tease out other creatures that normally we might have to wait until we have a little bit more mana in the can. Whenever Ilharg the Razor Boar attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. And when it dies, you can put it 3rd from the top of your library. So you might do that. I don't know. Krenko 10 Street Kingpin. This is in here just because of its jank. It's a 3-drop 1/2. Whenever Krenko 10 Street Kingpin attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it. Then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Krenko's power. I always chuckle when I see a card that is just like got some serious janky jank to it. This is just a really good 3-drop. Magus of the Moon, doubling up the Blood Moon mechanic, non-basic lands or mountains, but in a creature form. And now there's Nesting Dragon. This is a super nasty shenanigan-y card. It is a 5-drop 5/4 flying with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, which is going to be happening a lot, create a 0/2 red dragon egg creature token with defender, and when this creature dies, create a 2/2 red dragon creature token with flying. And then you could pay 1 red and it gets a +1 until end of turn. So if there's a board clear and dragon gets whacked, oh, not the dragon, if the eggs get whacked, you still have a lot of board presence, which is great. Unless, of course, it's an exile board clear. Then that would be moot. Rampaging Ferocidon. In here for a very specific reason is that players can't gain life. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. That's just an added bonus little ping, ping, ping to their face. Skyline Despo. I want to say Despo. For 7, it's a 5/5 flyer. When Skyline Despo enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. Who doesn't like becoming the Monarch? At the beginning of your upkeep, if you are the Monarch, put a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. And chances are, it's gonna have haste. Stranglehold. Oh, this is a great card if you're not familiar with it. Your opponents can't search libraries. No tutoring for you. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. Oh, no Nexuses of Fate either. Yeah, take that, Mr. Blue player. Tarin Mauler for 3/2/2 changeling. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a 1/1 counter on Tarin Mauler. So if you play this early, it's going to start buffing itself. If you play this mid-game, it's still going to start buffing itself. This is a solid card. Torbaran, Thane of Red Fell. This is in here specifically because it just gives you a little bit more damage each time your guys go swinging. It's a 2/4. If a red source you control will deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. This is right out of Throne of Eldraine. As of this recording, this is still in standard and still a very, very solid card, especially in mono red aggro decks, which I happen to run up the ladder. Treasure Nabber. This is just a fun one that actually is very effective. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, gain control of that artifact until the end of your next turn. So if you got something somebody else has, hey, steal it for a turn. Use it, give it back. Lovely. Underworld Breach for 2. Boy, this thing got banned in a couple of different formats, but it's not banned in Commander. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Wow! So this is an enchantment technically, but it behaves like a sorcery because at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. So this is going to help you do, in essence, a flashback, so to speak, an escape, as it says, where you can play something at a graveyard that's going to be super effective for you. Just a great, great 2-drop. Valakut Exploration. This is going to help you with not only draw, but some shenanigan garbage for you because of its landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, exile a top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. And then if you can't or you don't play it at the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. So as you're playing, if you have this on the playfield, just be careful to, if it pulls up a land, to play that land instead of the land you might have in your hand. I know it probably goes without saying, but, you know, I've made that mistake every once in a while. All right, War's Toll, another really cool one. Zach, actually, my colleague, brought this one up, and we were like, oh, we absolutely need to add this to this build. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, tap all lands that player controls. If a creature an opponent controls attacks, all creatures that opponent controls attack if able. So what this does for you is if somebody's going to be running an instant or something, it's going to tap them all at once. So they have to decide, am I going to be countering this? Am I going to stage this, that, and the other thing? Or even on their phases. It's like all or nothing. You got to tap them all at once. So it really disrupts play for your opponents. It's not going to gain you friends, but you know what? Hopefully you're already playing with friends. Great card. If you weren't familiar with that one, definitely run that in red decks, especially this one. Anger. All right, we are in the haste segment of the build. Like I was saying earlier multiple times, a lot of this is about getting the haste going in the mechanics. So we'll start with Anger. Not only does it have haste, it is a 4-drop 2/2, which those are not good stats, but the rest of this is. As long as Anger is in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. Yeah! Archetype of Aggression for 3/3/2. Creatures you control have trample. Creatures your opponent control lose trample and can't have or gain trample. Now, technically, this isn't a haste card, or not even technically. This isn't a haste card, but because of that trample stuff, this just goes so much with the whole haste mechanic. That's why it's in here. I suppose this could be in the shenanigans section. Fervor. This is just a card that gives all your creatures haste. Hall of the Bandit Lord. Now, this is pay 3 life, add 1 mana to your mana pool, but more importantly, if that mana is spent on a creature spell, that creature has haste. Sweet. Hammer of Perforos. I'm going to go with Perforos. So infrequently that I say this names of this card. Creatures you control have haste. Well, yes, that's why it's in the haste category. And for 3 and a tap, sacrifice a land, put a 3/3 color Golem enchantment artifact creature token onto the battlefield. We are running this more for the haste part of it, but the other stuff is just sort of like added benefit bonus stuff. Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker. Say that 5 times really fast. It's a 2/2 haster. This thing is just janky, and it is from how long ago? I thought this was an old card. I was playing a lot. No, that's the artwork I'm familiar with. This thing was janky then, it's janky now, but in it's just an awesome way. It's got haste, put a creature token into play that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. That creature token has haste, sacrifice it at the end of the turn. Well, the sacking at the end of the turn becomes less and less relevant if we got Moraug out or some of our other double combat mechanics going. Oh, what a fabulous card in this build. It is somewhat of a spendy card, so it is swappable. We'll talk about that towards the end. Robber of a Rich, just a solid 2/2. You get to start taking cards from your opponent. Just a great, great card. Run it in red. Zealous Conscripts for 5. It's a 3/3 haster. When Zealous Conscripts enter the battlefield, gain control of target permanent until end of turn. Really? Yep, really. Untap that permanent, it gains haste until end of turn. So imagine if you snake somebody else's permanent and then it happens to be a creature, because it doesn't have to be a creature, but let's just say it is a creature, and you have landfall triggered and you're doing combat more than once. You're going to swing with your stolen creature just that many more times. If that doesn't put a smile on your face, I don't know what will. Oh, that is just fantastic stuff. So, again, in review, we've got a lot of things going on here, and it's all just encircling Moraug's mechanics of landfall and multiple attack phases. We've got the landfall mechanics built in there with all of the fetch lands, all of the haste that we have in there, and just everything that's supporting your commander in a really fun, aggressive way. And then we have some added bonuses in here, like the Blood Moon shenanigans and all of the double combat going on. And you know what? We also have the maybe board. But basically, in the description will be a link to this build. There are some swappable what we call the maybe board that you can swap out for budgetary reasons. Obviously, if there's a card in here that's super expensive, put in the comments asking a question about possible swaps. In the lands, all the fetch lands and the expensive lands like Prismatic Vista and all of those, you can swap those out for other ones that are cheaper. Absolutely. Or just put in an additional mountain. You do not have to be running all these fetch lands. However, just keep in mind, the ones that you do run that you crack and grab another one is just going to trigger Moraug that many more times, which means you get that many more combat phases. This is a really strong build. This is a really fun build. It ramps really well. It plays really well. And most importantly, it's very, very fun to run. Just to sort of end this on a note, you know, there are some swappable ones on the side here, like Helm of the Host, for example, that you could definitely put in if you wanted something a little cheaper, although Helm of the Host is like $12. So please put some comments in the comments section. If you have questions, please ask. We appreciate all of your guys' support. Hit the like button, hit subscribe if you're new to our channel, and check out our next episodes. We're putting Commander decks together all the time, and other stuff as well. If there's something you'd like to see on the channel, please tell us. And again, be a friend of the gathering, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.